Well, for a lot of folks out there, you've probably seen some of the recent news regarding the Walt Disney Company and their subsidiary, or at least their 70% subsidiary, which we'll talk about tonight, Hulu, regarding their aversion to political campaign ads recently from the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, and their Senatorial Campaign Committee. Now, since then, that has been effectively retracted to at least some seeming degree by Hulu and Disney. But I think there's a lot more to the story, and WDW Pro and I will discuss that here today. Stay tuned. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video not yet subscribed to this channel, please do take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please leave a comment before you head out the door today. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, my very welcomed and esteemed guest from thatparkplace.com, WDW Pro, notorious Disney analyst, here with us once again to talk about today's subject. Pro, how are you doing, sir?
I am fantastic and excited to be here, and I think we're going to be covering this in a way that most other sources are unlikely to do so, so that's always fun.
Seems like it. And I had taken a bit of a backseat to this issue when I saw it break over the weekend. I was busy, but my skepticism kind of got the better of me, and I said, let me hold off, because I think there's going to be some more unwinding to do with the story with regards to, at first, Hulu, that is 70% owned by Disney, decided not to air a certain political campaign ad leading into the 2022 midterm election cycle that we have, that is just starting to kind of get kicked off. We usually see these cycles really as we exit summer, get into September 1st, especially like right after Labor Day. This is when political campaign cycle really starts burning into overdrive over the course of the following 8 weeks or so. Hulu rejected a particular ad, and a lot of noise was made about that. There was a lot of hemming and hawing and gnashing of teeth, as it were, by the Democrat National Committee and the Democrat Committee for the Senatorial. I think it's DSCC. I always get the acronyms messed up, but the Senate Campaign Committee for the DNC, and now Hulu has decided, okay, we'll let it in. And of course, there was a guffaw from a lot of places out there that Disney, of course, has caved again. And Disney is oh, look, that was it. It only took them a day. And they caved into the woke mob and blah, blah, blah. And I get that. I totally understand the sentiment out there. But of course, as you and I have our typical conversations, we try to take a little bit more of a pragmatic approach and examine
go a little bit deeper, which we're going to get into today, because I think this is definitely a conversation worth having, because we have talked about this ad nauseum in the last few months with the direction that Disney, hopefully, from our read, may be going differently in the next year or two. This is a big ship, as we keep reminding everybody. It takes a long time to correct course. It's not overnight. But this particular issue does not jump out to me as being some type of cave. So you wrote a great piece today on That Park Place, came out tonight, just about an hour before we started recording this. And I want to bring this up. And well, I want before you do, Valliant, before you do, let me give you some kudos, because you made a fantastic point, and we need to just review that for a moment. So a lot of people are having a knee-jerk reaction, and some of those people are people that you and I both respect, and
absolutely
that put out great content. So I'm not being critical of those individuals today, tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're watching this video, ladies
not
and
at
gentlemen.
all. No.
That's not the goal. But you brought up the point that this is occurring in July. This is not occurring after Labor Day when all of this heats up. So let's just, everybody, okay, let's not
do the knee-jerk thing. Let's think about this at a deeper level. Why would this be occurring in July? It's likely occurring in July because political parties have identified they want to advertise on Hulu, and they needed to make some sort of conflict in order to negotiate, let's say, although they're not behind the scenes talking in the way that you might think, but negotiate in an overall concept their ability to be on these streaming platforms going forward. It's not just Hulu. They're also interested in other streaming platforms, and they want to go ahead and send a signal to places like Netflix, for example, that's going to be doing advertising in the future.
Absolutely.
They want to send
the next
a
few
signal,
months.
right, that they're going to raise a stink if you don't let them on those platforms. They want to have their stuff on as you're watching Bob's Burgers and drifting off to sleep at night, or if you're watching Stranger Things. Oh my God, do they ever want to be on Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
So, fantastic point that this is occurring now, not after Labor Day. That's intentional. Okay, keep going now. I had to throw you kudos if you're going to throw me some.
No, I appreciate that. And no, I want to reiterate one thing you said, and that is, we're not here to dance on any other YouTubers. We never do that here. I mean, short of me actually getting outright attacked by somebody, this is not, we do our own thing here on Valliant Renegade, have a tremendous amount of love and respect for all the friends I've made on YouTube. I think the same goes for Pro. I don't want to speak out of school, but I mean, we're going to share a different level of opinion here to try to give kind of the business and financial angle, because that is what we do here. But you did an article today on this, and I thought it was very poignant. Let me bring that in. And there's more to the Hulu policy change than meets the eye. So Pro, I don't, obviously we don't need to read this verbatim. You wrote it. So why don't you walk us through some of the things that you discuss and some of the inside Disney information inside baseball information that you've gotten from your sources and what you've heard.
All right. So let's provide a little bit of context. Yesterday, I discussed on thatparkplace.com, the place where all the news is fun, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, I discussed that there were some signs that companies like Disney and Netflix were beginning to intentionally moderate their policies. And that's true. Mm-hmm. And you can see some of those signs. Now, the creatives are not on board with that, and the creatives likely are going to push harder into extremism that is damaging the brands. So the creatives are sensing this, and they're going to do things that are outlandish and outrageous. But that's a sign that they know what's happening as well. Mm-hmm. From the business side of things, it's beginning to seem that these companies have seen the light. And by the light, I mean they're realizing that you cannot push your business towards a smaller and smaller demographic and still hope to grow. You're going to have to reach out to the broadest demographic possible. How do you get to the biggest demographic? You do so by going back to the sensible center, not the far left, not the far right. And I'm not advocating for any company to go right or left. I want these entertainment companies to get out of politics and out of ideology, period. Mm-hmm. The reason I want that is because I believe that entertainment is the place that binds culture together. I think that it's a binding agent that it protects civilization, because just like sports, okay, that's another example of entertainment. Liberals and conservatives and libertarians and socialists and every other group out there can come together, and they can support the Bears, or they can support the Yankees, or they can support the Packers.
The Bears.
Bears.
I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. Old SNL joke for those of the younger crowd watching right now.
I almost have a Polish sausage stuck in my aorta right now.
Where's Joe Montana when you need him?
So, but it's look what just happened. Okay, everybody, pay attention. Scroll back 15 seconds. What did we do? Valiant and I shared an anecdote from 30 years ago, maybe, from SNL, right?
Just about 30 years ago.
Right. So we went back and we shared, because that is a mutual experience that we've had. Now, Valliant and I have never even met in person, and we didn't grow up in the same area. We may have vastly different viewpoints, but because we have that connective fiber, that tissue that's connecting us in the culture, we're able to have a shared experience together, and it gives us shared ground. It's familiar territory. That's what these companies have to do. They have to get back. They've got to get back to where they're doing that, because if they don't, they're going to bifurcate the economy so that there's conservative entertainment and there's liberal entertainment and there's all these other different forms of entertainment. And that is a net negative, not only for the companies, but for society at large. All right, now, continuing on. So what happened was that one of the examples I used for how companies are beginning to moderate, one of the examples I used was that Disney was refusing political ads on Hulu. Then, within hours, it seemed as if Disney had reversed that decision. It's much more complicated, and we'll chat about that in just a moment.
Indeed.
So I started talking to sources today, and we were taking a little bit of heat at that Park Place over having talked about that, and hours later it was reversed. And, we're mature, and we can handle that. There are other people that have belief systems where they think that the truth is only used for power. I think the truth is actually something real, and you just want to try and grasp as close as you can to it. And so I don't mind being wrong as long as I can switch to being right as quickly as possible. So it's okay with me if we take some criticism. What I wanted to know was I actually wrong, or was there more to the story? Started talking with sources and speaking broadly, because I don't want to give away any sources, and I don't want to speak with specificity that would reveal who they are or where they're working. But broadly speaking, what I found out was that, one, the effort was occurring in order to streamline a business process behind the scenes. It had very little to do with Disney wanting to be divisive on their streaming platforms, i.e. Hulu and i.e. ESPN Plus. They wanted ESPN Plus and Hulu to share the exact same certification for these ads so that they could be played. The other thing that I found out was that, according to the source, and this is the thing that really is the focus of today's article that I've put out. According to the source, and things can change, but according to the source, and with strong emphasis, they do not believe that Disney is going to permit any political ads on Disney Plus. Disney Plus being by far the most important streaming platform they have. Hulu and ESPN Plus don't even come close, although sports are important to Disney, and we've talked about that before. But by giving this bone, by giving this gift to the political campaigns out there right now with Hulu, the source believes that Disney is attempting to protect Disney Plus in the future and have a way to argue that they gave Hulu to these political efforts, but they're not going to give Disney Plus. And remember that Disney Plus will be coming out with advertising, we believe at this time, right at the height of these political ads, as well as after the midterms going into the presidential election, which is where all the fighting is going to happen. Disney is trying, in this source's opinion, and you be the judge later on whether or not this source is right, but Disney is trying to protect their Disney Plus platform from going in the same direction by giving another option.
And I would, from a business standpoint, from a financial, a fiduciary, and a legal standpoint, I would absolutely 100% understand and agree with that assessment. I mean, if I was sitting in the big chair, that's exactly what I would look at. And one thing that I want to bring up, now you mentioned Disney is focused on Disney Plus, and that Hulu and ESPN are effectively to them adjuncts, which I to an extent, and I want to put this in context for the audience, I think that is correct. But at the same time, I also want to acknowledge, that ESPN, and not so much ESPN Plus, but ESPN itself, which is a conversation for another day, because I've been saying for years, since long before I was on YouTube, there is going to come a day in the not too distant future, once those contracts come up with the cable service providers, Spectrum or Time Warner or whatever, whoever your cable or satellite service provider is where you are, once those ESPN renewal contracts come up, Disney is going to do something very much akin to what just happened with the IPL, the Cricket League. They're going to break up the broadcasting rights because Disney wants to bring the streaming rights of all of ESPN, not just what's on Plus, back home, because that is a huge money machine. Otherwise, they're going to make these cable providers pay through their freaking nose for it, like money they have never seen before. But with
that's
Hulu,
a great point. Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say just in closing, Hulu's kind of the same thing. Hulu's a huge cash machine for Disney. Hulu's ARPU, the average revenue per user, is the envy of the streaming universe, apart from somebody like Roku. Nobody can touch it. But what Pro is saying is correct. What Disney views as the future of a cash cow, and not next year or even the year after, when they project Disney Plus to finally become profitable at the close of fiscal year 2024. But 2030, 2035, they are envisioning Disney Plus as being one of the big cash cows, because that is entirely proprietary Disney content that they control. And we'll get to this in a minute. Hulu, Disney does not completely control yet, and there's a key element to that plays into this story. So I just want everybody to bear that in mind. But Pro, go ahead, please.
Okay, let me roll back because I forgot to mention one important thing. The other important thing is that when this change was made to Hulu, this change was not the only option on the table. There were three options. Option number one was that it could be decided by Disney and others who control Hulu that they were going to continue to not allow political ads on the service. Now, in a moment, we'll get to why you say that was almost impossible, and I agree with you, and it's going to be a great point, which is not featured in the article. A second option was that they could have adopted the same policy that governs their major broadcasting networks, such as ABC. Those are much more wide open, and they would permit far more divisive content onto Hulu and onto ESPN Plus, were they to change that. The third option they had was to shift this to match ESPN Plus. There is fine print in the language for the policy on ESPN Plus, which now applies to Hulu. And that fine print basically gives the streaming service the option to say no for almost any reason that it deems plausible for them not wanting to divide their audience. So anything that they deem controversial, they can request an edit or a change to the advertising. Now, I can understand why people on the right would be very leery of that, and I think you probably should be. But I also know that that's going to come down to some sort of bureaucratic corporate panel that's going to be approving this, and probably is the same panel approving for ESPN Plus. And so, if something happens with these political ads, and an ad gets through that you think is inappropriate or divisive, or you think that things are being unfair to the left or the right, this is not the kind of thing, I don't think yet, that's rising up to the level of CEO. So don't go out there and think that it's Bob Chapek who's making that decision.
Bingo.
They don't want to touch that. It's going to some bureaucratic panel. And no doubt they're going to have their own innate biases. But it's going to be a panel with people you've never heard of.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And that's one of the things that every time something like this, and I'm so glad you said that because it completely slipped my mind, you are 100% correct. Every time something like this comes out in the news today with, some third or fourth or seventh or eighth tranche down the line in the Disney corporate hierarchy did something, it comes back on Chapek. And it's like, you got to... He is not managing most of this stuff. And a lot of people like to talk about Star Wars and things like this. Believe me.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Bob Chapek has got Lucasfilm, and Star Wars is barely a bump on a frog's butt in a Louisiana swamp. I hate to tell you. I really do. And I don't mean that flippantly. I'm just saying, truly, that's where it is right now. He has bigger fish to fry. He's gonna get to that He's got other stuff. And when we talked about this, or I talked about this in a previous video or another live stream recently where I said, look, Disney, when we look at the grand scheme of things, Disney just a couple of weeks ago announced, and this was in Deadline magazine, literally maybe not even 2 weeks ago at this point, they pre-sold $9 billion with a B. I think this was actually, I did this. This was on Andrew Legal Mindset's channel last weekend. $9 billion in ad pre-sales that they just did for the next 6 to 12 months. And that includes ESPN, ESPN Plus, that includes Hulu, that includes upcoming Disney Plus. About a third of that $9 billion ad commitment that they secured from advertisers was for their streaming services. The other $6 billion was for ABC and ESPN. So you can see where the money is. This is the size of thing that people like Chapek at the top of the ladder are zeroed in on. The $100 million Disney Plus show is whatever. I hate to tell you that, but that's just the reality of it. He is not sitting there lauding over every single thing that comes across a Disney Plus. I mean, they just want to see what's the bottom line. Now, as we've talked about before, if the trajectory over a long enough period of time becomes bad enough, then you're going to start seeing things like I talked about in my most recent video with the Marvel phase, right? Marvel phase 4. There's obviously a financial problem there. And believe me, that is not going unnoticed by a Bob Chapek. That's going to take a couple of years to probably rectify. But stuff like this that we're talking about now, this is, you have to put things into perspective in terms of how they relate to a company like Disney that has a multi-$100 billion market capitalization.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, Valliant, it sounds to me like you're saying that the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, Bob Chapek, did not, in fact, probably know that Obi-Wan Kenobi's romantic preferences were going to be altered in a young adult novel.
Let me tell you, Bob Chapek, the first time Bob Chapek probably found out about that, if he's even seen it yet, was today if he even looks at YouTube or Twitter,
and then
which I doubt.
And his next words were probably, my God.
Yeah, his next words were probably shit. Again, this is not stuff that he is at this level deeply engaged in. And again, I know it's hard. I know there's a lot of people out there that are skeptics. Bob Chapek's just as bad as Iger and all this kind of stuff. I still caution people, please look. He just got renewed. It's going to take several years here. We're going to have to be patient. Now, if I will grant everybody this, if 2 years from now, we're still seeing the same level and frequency of this kind of craziness that is being greenlit at that point. Not it might be coming out, because the stuff that we're seeing now coming out in theaters and Disney Plus was greenlit 2, 3, 4 years ago now, thanks to COVID. 4 years ago in some cases. So what we see coming out 3 years from now is going to be the first stuff that was greenlit under the Chapek leadership kind of thing. So that's what. And
he's got to flush out a ton of personnel.
God, there's a lot. Peter Rice was a good start. I don't want to get back into that. We did a great video on that a couple of weeks ago. Go back and check that one out. But back to this topic. This all plays in, right? This is the attitude right now. And Disney has to, and I think you're absolutely right. They're trying to streamline the approval process. Hulu, ESPN Plus. Now you brought up ABC. Let's talk about ABC. Let's talk about why I think that they did not do the same. They don't have to do the same things that they do on ABC. And the reason is, for everybody's edification out there, and again, I know I'm talking to a crowd that's probably my age, around my age. Not all of us quite remember. I didn't grow up with cable. I was probably almost 20 years old before I got my first cable subscription, right? My dad never did that at the house. We had broadcast television.
You're talking to the YouTube channel with the highest IQ audience on the net. Give the people what they want,
I realize that the highest IQ folks, but they may not remember this.
They make Mensa cry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We do have a very, very intelligent audience here, with a few exceptions. But what I love about the few exceptions, they always drop some of the funniest comments on my videos ever. That's another story. But that being said,
ABC, just like NBC, CBS, Fox broadcast channel, they're all under FCC, the Federal Communications Guidelines. What that means is if I'm ABC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Walt Disney Channel, if the Democrat Party or the Republican Party comes to me with a campaign ad, I pretty much have to run it. There's very little that they can do short of it being quote unquote incredibly offensive, like it was amazingly violent. There have been a few ads over the years that have been put out that have really been called on the carpet. But by and large, the FCC dictates that they have to put political ad campaign content pretty much on broadcast television because they're using the public airwaves, right? As they have been for decades, almost 100 years at this point, if you go back to the days of radio and forward. Cable stations and streaming services are not regulated by the FCC. So they can go ahead and dictate their own terms of what they put on. So for Disney to try to streamline how they approve political ad content, they would be more inclined to marry Hulu's directives with that of ESPN Plus, as Pro mentioned, or with any of their other cable channels that they may own and or operate at this point, especially after the Fox acquisition. That would make the most sense. Whereas things like ABC, which is traditional over-the-air broadcast, even though you might be receiving it on satellite or streaming or receiving it through your cable provider, ABC still at its core is an over-the-air broadcast network. So that's what makes that different, just for everybody.
Valliant. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to explain the part about the ownership for Hulu, because you and I chatted about that before we started.
Yeah.
And it's a genius point. I mean, really and truly, there was little opportunity for Disney to make any other decision once they started taking heat. So, at least publicly. So, if you wouldn't mind explaining that, it was your original idea, and I think it's genius. I'm honestly a little jealous. I should have put it in the original article. It just didn't occur to me in time.
Put it in an article tomorrow. That's fine. We'll post
hired.
the video.
You'll do the article.
Okay. So here it is. And this is it. And this is something not discussed in the article. So for the viewers out there, you're getting first dibs on this. Okay. And that is, let me go ahead and switch the slide over, because I wanted to, when I saw this is the first thing that hit me. And nobody's talking about this. Hulu, for those of you that don't know, Hulu was a joint venture when it started between four companies. Disney, COMCAST, which is NBC Universal, Fox had a piece, and Time Warner. Okay? Now, Disney, of course, acquired Fox through a purchase of $71 billion back, about 5 years ago now, right? We discussed that ad nauseum. Of course, in that purchase came the shares of Hulu that Fox owned. That raised Disney's stake in Hulu to over 50%, because Fox and Disney were two of the largest shareholders. They then turned around and got AT&T, which at that point, AT&T was in a let's sell everything mode, right? John Stankey, the CEO and chairman of AT&T, was like, hey, Disney, we can offload our 9.5% stake in Hulu right now to Disney for cash. See ya. I mean, that was it. And they offloaded that. Now Disney's stake became north of 60%. The only remaining other stakeholder in Hulu was, and of course, this article is from who? CNBC, which is NBC, Comcast, Universal. They own the remaining 33% stake in Hulu that Disney does not own. Now, I want to have everybody understand something out there. Even though Disney is the majority shareholder or stakeholder in Hulu, and Disney has, by far and away, without question, the controlling interest, right? Disney, even with NBC, Universal, Comcast having a minority stake, and no, I don't mean ethnic, racial minorities, right? We're talking about actual numerical minority stakeholder here, right?
Take that, algorithms.
Yes, take that, algorithms. Disney, at the end of the day, still has a fiduciary responsibility.
So in the financial world, you have things like general and limited partnerships. So you may have a group of investors that get together. It might be 1,000 investors get together, and they each buy a little share of a limited partnership to go invest in an oil drilling property or something like that. Whatever you want to throw at it, right? And then you have one general partner or a singular group of general partners that makes all the decisions, that does the management of the investment. The limited partners don't really get to vote. They don't really have a say, but the limited partners still have a legally protected right and expectation of fiduciary responsibility on that general partner. The general partner can't just sack the company for their own benefit and leave the limited partners in the lurch, okay? That's the same thing going on here with Hulu. So if Disney decided, you know what, political campaign season is coming up, you know, we understand that the Republican and Democrat national committees, their Senate and congressional campaigns, all of the multi-billion dollars that is out there sitting in PACs or political action committees, apart from the parties themselves, they're going to spend billions of dollars, literally billions with a B, this election cycle across the country. For all these different Senate and congressional candidates, all the local races that are coming up. And you know what? Hulu's just going to decide, or in Disney's case, they're going to decide, we're not doing that.
And just think how that gets messier. So not only would they say that, no, Hulu's not going to do that, but our ESPN Plus streaming service that we fully control, that's going to make that money.
That's going to do
where it would even get messier.
And so is ABC, and so anything else on cable that they have. And here's the thing. If they cough it up, right now I want to have everybody understand. COMCAST, NBC Universal, holds the cards, believe it or not. Because in January of 2024, they have a signed agreement with Disney from 3 years ago at this point. Actually, 4 years ago almost at this point. January of 2024, they can stick it to Disney. It's kind of like a call option in the stock market, right? They get to force Disney to buy, okay? And what happens is, in this case, is Comcast can come in and say, Disney, you owe us $27.3 billion with a B for their 33% stake in Hulu. Disney has to buy it. Now, that's the bare minimum. The bare minimum. It's going to go to market value. Now, if the market value is less than 27.3 at that point, NBC can force the 27.3 billion and Disney has to pay it. But if it's worth $40 billion, NBC Universal is going to want 40. So if Disney starts dumping hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars of political campaign advertising in a midterm election year, guess what NBC Universal is going to do? They might want to come after them for a breach of fiduciary responsibility. And that's, I think,
people didn't think we were going there in this video.
Yeah, I bet you didn't. But here's the thing. If I'm NBC Universal and Disney unilaterally was like, wait a minute, you have a fiduciary responsibility to manage my investment that I have. We have an agreement, and you're saying no to $500 million of ad revenue on your service in the next, bro, we're going to court.
That's
because,
right.
Again, NBC has the power to force Disney to buy out their shares at this point. And they could say, well, Disney is deliberately trying to drive down the value of Hulu by not putting on these hundreds of millions of dollars of ads just so they can pay us the bare minimum of $27.5 billion next year or a year and a half.
That's right. And you've got 2 years of this election cycle, because once the midterms are over, it's off to the races.
The presidential cycle starts. Yeah,
that's right. They're going to start announcing who's running and all that. But let's scale that up one more level. If you can even believe it's possible. I mean, my gosh, look at where we have ended up in discussing this. I mean, I'm being a bit braggadocious about you right now, but I just don't think this is going to be covered anywhere else. I mean,
no,
this
probably not.
This is great. I mean, I'm loving it. I'm sitting
sorry,
here. Sorry,
I'm a nerd.
The McDonald's jingle is playing in my head right now. Ta-da. Oh, never mind.
I'm loving it.
So scaling up one more level. there has been a bit of a conspiracy theory out there, which conspiracy theories sometimes turn out to be true. So, but there's a bit of a conspiracy theory because it deals with a conspiracy, and it is a theory that says that Disney is not going to moderate themselves because the largest shareholders for the Walt Disney Company are entities which have no interest in the financial aspects of Disney. They want to use it as a vehicle for cultural change. So there's been this conspiracy that BlackRock, for example, is in bed with this idea of moving Disney farther and farther in a particular political
the ESG
direction.
Funds. Yeah,
that's right. And the idea is that very pro-China entities are trying to move the country, and Disney is one way which they can do that. But what you're just describing, this fiduciary responsibility with Hulu, if you scale it up, that's why I'm still feeling very positive about the future of Disney, because it's not that I think that Bob Chapek is an excellent CEO. I really think that he's more of the voice of the board. I have never thought that Bob Chapek is this extraordinary visionary. In fact, I don't think that he's a visionary at all. And there are things that I don't like that he does.
I guess it depends on your definition of visionary. I mean, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
he's not a Walt. He's not the kind of creative visionary.
No, he's not a creative
business. Right. He's a business guy through and through.
He's a business visionary. I'd give him that, maybe. But,
I will grant you that.
Creative, no.
Sure. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
But I still feel good about Disney in the long run because I think that the free market will function as it should with Disney. And I just don't see. I mean, there's no way that you can tell me that a company can damage its brand and limit its consumer base, and that it won't correct over time as investors say, hey, what are you doing with my money?
Yeah.
I just don't see any way around that. So I think it's a math problem. Eventually, Disney has to come back to the sensible center.
I think at this point, and especially after Chapek is so fresh off his renewal, I mean, you ran right into a very heated, and I know we hear this every 2 years, every 4 years, the most important election cycle in our history,
of your lifetime.
Of your lifetime, right? No, I will say that I think this is going to be definitely one of the most heated, I'm not saying important, but definitely heated midterm election cycles that we have seen in our lifetime, just because of a lot of what we've seen in the news. And I don't want to get deep into the politics here, but this is an observational of just piece that I want to throw out there.
The country is very, very polarized, and the market, therefore, is polarized.
And I think at this point, and again, you're not going to see this on Disney Plus. And don't forget, now you mentioned earlier you're predicting when it's happened. I've said this before on my channel. I'm going to state it again for the record. Disney Plus ad-based tier will happen after October 1st and before November 1st. It's going to happen. October 1st is the first day of fiscal year 2020-23, and you're going to hear the date of the ad-based campaign announced on August 13th, Wednesday, August 13th, from Bob Chapek at the Walt Disney Company during the quarterly stockholder meeting. If not, a day or two before or after, but it's going to centralize around that quarterly report because they want, I believe, firmly, they want this ad-based tier off and running, and frankly, there's no better time to do it since we know they're doing it before the end of the year to get it launched right at the start of fiscal 2023 and kick Disney Plus off with a full year of an ad-based tier. Watch.
So, I would love to write an article and use you as an unnamed source for this, but I think you've ruined that. I
think I just screwed that.
Thrown that all away.
Yeah. No inside information. This is just 20 years in the financial industry, just business intuition.
Well, and we know that they're going towards ads, and we know that Netflix is going towards ads. It's just the timing,
right? And you're right. Earlier, Netflix is going to have to probably put these political ads on. It's not going to happen this cycle because look, Netflix is not beholden to the same thing Disney is. They're on a different frame at this point. And frankly, if I'm Netflix right now, there's no way I'm launching an ad-based tier before Election Day. There's not a chance in hell I'm allowed.
No.
Disney's a different story because, again, Disney Plus, I think you're totally right. They've already set the mold. They've never had political ads on the Disney Channel when it's on cable. I don't remember any political ads ever when Freeform, whatever the hell it is now, was still AEC Family. They've always steered away from that. So for their children's
and the Family Channel,
I remember that too.
That's right.
But they never had that there. So, but the things like ESPN, which, let's be honest, half of ESPN's broadcasters like Stephen A. Smith and all these whack jobs they have on there, most of them suck. I'm sorry, they're terrible. And not just, but I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about sports. They're painful to listen to.
Well, they're often not there for the purpose of giving you solid, truthful content.
No.
Whether it's sports or whether it's politics.
They dive into politics with everything now on there. So no, you're going to have political campaign ads on ESPN. You're going to have it on ABC because that's what the FCC demands. You're going to have it on other Hulu, whatever. Not going to have it on Disney Plus. And again, after this, it's I'd be a little surprising, but Disney may decide, you know what, just so we don't have to have the fight, they're going to push back their launch of the ad-based tier a month until November 10th, after the midterm election cycle, so they don't have to deal with it.
That would make a lot of sense. November 11th would make a lot of sense.
But absent this recent news, I was still, and I am still, in the camp that ad-based tier is launching in October with the start of the fiscal 2023 year. If it doesn't happen, if they push it back to November, I'm telling you, what I just said is why they did it.
Well, they have to begin generating some serious revenues because, like you've been saying, when it comes to these studios, specifically Marvel, but we can also go into these other ones like Lucasfilm. That's not the purpose of this video, but it seems to me they're going to have to go into ads because they've got to get another revenue source. They've wiped out a lot of these additional ancillary funding sources, revenue sources for these movies and shows that aren't doing so hot in their initial runs.
No, they have to, and I wish Script Doctor, who's a good YouTube friend out there, he and I have had so many wonderful conversations on this. He very much understands the inner workings of Hollywood because his name is not just a name; he really is a Hollywood script doctor. He's a professional script doctor for Hollywood studios, and we've talked about this. Advertising is what drives the market. And it's the advertising coming into places like Netflix and Disney Plus is a very, 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 very positive thing because there's going to be more transparency on these streaming services with who is watching what. Because in order to sell ads on your streaming service, you're going to have to tell the public how many people are watching this show or that show. Or we're not just, we can't rely on abstract numbers from Samba or even Nielsen to some degree. I mean, the transparency is going to get much more open. And I think that's where it's going. And we
need it because the box office numbers, I mean, just think about how blind we would be at this point if the major film companies had been successful in knocking out AMC and these other theaters during the pandemic. My gosh, having the box office numbers is how we know really where the culture is going and what people are wanting to see. When you watch these massive drop-offs for Marvel, you wouldn't know that unless all of that was public knowledge. And I cannot wait for streaming to somehow become more public where we can actually know what's going on. It's important for understanding what's going on with society. It really is.
Netflix is really Netflix is leading the charge in transparency. They as far as all the streaming companies go, they're becoming more and more frequent with delivering. Here's how many people watch this stuff. The new Ryan Gosling film on Netflix. That I can't remember the gray something. I can't even think of it right now. I can't
think of it either. We covered it before, but yeah.
Samba numbers came out. 3.5 million according to Samba. That's almost twice as many that watched Obi-Wan Kenobi. And this was just a 90-minute random Ryan Gosling film on Netflix. Netflix was, I think, supposed to put out their official numbers this afternoon. So
what was the Toronto movie? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh, there's some movie on Netflix called A Guy in Toronto or something. And it it decimated Obi-Wan Kenobi in its finale, and it's like, my gosh.
Yeah.
How is this even possible?
It's where the interest lies. And again, and Samba, I'm not beholden to Samba's numbers. I think they have a lot of issues with those numbers. And this is why we need more transparency. This is why we need, with these political campaign ads we're talking about right now, this is why there needs to be more transparency from the streaming services providers themselves with what's going on. Not that they have to tell us every minute, every viewer for every show they've had, but what they're going to start selling a lot of advertising. Like Hulu will put these numbers out to their advertisers, and they leak. Disney Plus and these other players are going to have to start doing that too, Netflix included. I think Netflix has been ahead of the game with putting some of these numbers out because Netflix is to the point now. It's like, okay, everybody else is in the game, so we're going to start dropping our numbers just because, frankly, they shame everybody else with streaming.
That's right.
And that's why Netflix is doing it now. They're like, that's why they did it with Stranger Things. Wham! 855 bajillion minutes in opening weekend. What you got, Disney? That's why they did it.
Just wait for the next Nielsen numbers when they come out.
Yeah, it's going to be
it's going to be a big week for that.
So, well, thank you WDW Pro for coming on. This has been fun as always. I hope everybody out there has maybe gleaned a little bit of additional information watching this video. I'm saying tonight. It's almost 10 o'clock at night where I am, almost 11 o'clock where Pro is, but you're watching this on Thursday morning on the July 28th. So thank you all for tuning in. And Pro, any final thoughts before we head out tonight?
Man, what a fun conversation. And wow, did this go places that I don't think the average person was expecting when we started talking about political ads. But go check it. It makes sense. All of it adds up. All of it is just, it's just logic based. None of this stuff is like off the wall. You got to have sticky notes attached to a wall somewhere with arrows drawn. This is just straightforward. This is how it works. And I had a really fun time in this conversation. This is one of my favorites. So, and thank you, Valliant, for bringing up the ownership of Hulu and how that sort of forced Disney's hand, no matter what. That's an excellent point.
That's my guess. That's my educated guess. Of course, I can't know for sure, but I know, looking at the facts, that just kind of jumped out at me. So I'm just from everybody's edification. I don't have an inside source, and I know that to be factually correct. That's just these kind of situations. That's generally what's going on. I promise you, I can almost 100% promise you, there was a phone call or an email or a video conference or something, a FaceTime. Somebody at COMCAST was talking to somebody at Disney about this in the last day or two.
And saying, where's my money?
Yeah.
Show me the money.
COMCAST, they're entitled to the profits of Hulu, 33% of the profits of Hulu at this point. So, it's, hey, you're going to cut out how many hundreds of millions? Are you, what? No.
All right, before we go, and Valliant, feel free to cut this. If it's off topic, cut it. But before we go, final prediction. When will Top Gun Maverick hit streaming?
Streaming.
Will it be in theaters for Labor Day?
Yes, it will. Tom Cruise.
I vote yes as well.
Tom Cruise holds the power. He said 120 days. Now, unless Paramount and Tom Cruise basically, unless Tom Cruise agrees to give Paramount a 90-day out instead of 120, for which Paramount will have to pay Cruise for, okay, probably another several millions of dollars. Then it's gonna hold 120 weight. Look, it's still making like $20 million a week right now. It made another $10 million this past weekend. Why would you pull this? I have no idea. I think Labor Day weekend's the perfect time to give it a send-off. I think if they want to shut it down, like right after Labor Day weekend, run it through Labor Day. This is your last chance to see this in theaters. Get the theaters to put it back on a PLF screen for at least one or two showings that weekend through Labor Day Monday. That's what I would do. And rack up another several $1 million that weekend. Then give it a month or two breather, and then it will wind up on Paramount Plus.
And how much would certain political factions out there like to be able to run ads during Top Gun Maverick on streaming for this political season.
Money.
To bring it back around to the original topic.
Money.
That's right.
We won't even go into which political party would probably love to run ads during Top Gun Maverick, but
it's okay. The audience all know.
Yeah, I know. We all know. So it's good to see everybody out there. Thank you again for checking us out tonight or this morning as you're watching this. Make sure you check out thatparkplace.com and WDW Pro. Thank you so much again for being here, Pro. And
highest IQ audience in the world, right out there, talking to you guys.
Yeah, indeed. We thank you all for watching, and we thank you for all your support. So please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please make sure you leave that comment before you head out the door today. And until next time, take care, folks.